Okay, so this one might catch you off guard a bit because this week I sat down with Natty, a senior designer based in Bristol, and we ended up having one of those conversations that just goes somewhere deeper than you might expect. Because we talk about grief, not just loss in the obvious sense, but we get into what it does to you as a human being, how it changes you, maybe even changes the way you see your life and your work and even yourself. Natty shares the story of her brother, Thomas, and what it was like growing up alongside him, then losing him, and then figuring out how to carry on afterwards. And honestly, there's so much in this about being human, the messy bits, the strength you didn't know you had, and that weird, surprising dose of hope that shows up out of nowhere along the way. If you've ever felt like you're just trying to keep going while something heavier is sitting underneath, and my goodness, I can resonate with that so much from these last few years, then this one will probably speak to you. This episode is sponsored by Adobe, provider of the AI-powered creative tools that are changing how we edit images. Whether you're a photographer, designer, marketer, or just someone who wants their photos to look incredible, new AI tools in Photoshop and the Firefly image editor make it easier than ever to bring your ideas to life, just by describing what you want. Find out more at the link in the show notes. We're probably going to be talking about quite a heavy theme today, Natty, looking at the emails that have been going back and forth, but yeah, today we're talking about grief, aren't we?
Yeah, I think obviously like caveating that I probably will cry at some point because that's just a natural part of grief and all that kind of stuff. But also that grief is not just when you lose someone. Grief can be a season, a stage of life, a result of an epic change that you weren't expecting, or, and even people really dismiss it, but pets are massive when we lose our pets and stuff. So I'm speaking from a position of, grieving someone in particular, but I've also had that grief of a pet and a stage of life and feeling like I've missed out on stuff and that I'm sad that those things aren't there anymore. But also, how does that become the cornerstone of how you move forward and how you carry on when those things aren't there anymore, and the hope that sits within. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bit heavy, but hopefully it's not all doom and gloom.
No, hopefully not. Gosh, no. It's an awful thing to go through grief, but there is a sort of light at the end of the tunnel, isn't there? And you go through all the processes, and one of them weirdly is laughing and remembering all the good times, and you feel awful that you might be like, oh my goodness, I remember that time. Do you remember that time when they did that? And
yeah,
it's honouring their memory, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Can you talk about who you've lost?
Yeah. 10 years ago, my brother Thomas died suddenly and unexpectedly. And it came to a certain extent without any warning. Thomas was 24 at the time, but he was severely autistic and epileptic. And the type of epilepsy that he had, we always knew from the beginning that, there was a risk, and there's always that chance that things don't go the way that you hope, and that his last seizure might be his last seizure. And so that's what happened. He died of something called SUDEP, which is sudden and unexpected death by epilepsy. And I guess the one of the few things that we can take away from it is that you can't be resuscitated from it. So it's not like, we tried and we didn't try hard enough. It was always that, this was going to be it. And also that he wasn't suffering. It happens very quickly. The brain just goes, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm overcharged. And that's why, it happens, and it's sudden and it's unexpected. But I love talking about him. He is one of my favorite people to talk about. And he had such a huge impact on my life, like just in general, beyond, you know, him dying, and how I've sort of rebuilt my life as a response to it, and how it's informed every kind of decision we've ever made as a family. We moved to the UK when I was 4.5, about to turn 5. And a huge part of that move was because he was diagnosed autistic. And we were from Brazil, in Rio, where, you know, life can be really tough there. And it's not necessarily, especially in the 90s, like, you know, it feels like the world was a very different place in the 90s. It's just not a place necessarily for people who aren't the cookie cutter mold, like, you know, that they've got additional needs, or they need a bit of help along the way, or the world's not built for them. And my parents made the really brave decision to go across the Atlantic and figure it out here. Yeah. So, and we stayed in the UK because of him, and everything was about him, and all the decisions we ever made. And his autism was very, very routine led, and he was not I don't want to say he was nonverbal, because he was able to speak with, you know, voice, etc. But he couldn't have had a conversation with me. So if you think about a toddler in a 24-year-old body, that's the kind of level of cognitive we're talking about. So I could ask him, Thomas, are you hungry? And he'd go, hungry, which was always the answer. He was always hungry, even if he'd just eaten. But, you know, he, as his older sister and the only other sibling, a huge part of my life was also being his best friend, and also being his carer, and also being his kind of communicator and representative to the world. And I had a kind of language with him that nobody else had. And so, you know, that being his sister is the biggest honor and the biggest privilege of my life. But it was massively sort of directionally pushed me into what I ended up doing for a living, because I care so much about stories being told. And I think being a designer is one of the greatest jobs in the world, because you get to be a storyteller. You get to tell people stories all the time. And how exciting is that? Like, it can't be boring.
Never. I'm nodding along when you were telling me all about Thomas, because I've had, spookily, I've had a very similar experience. My mother's sister, Veronica, she had Down syndrome. So she had the mind. I do like worry about saying it this way, but it's the only way I can think of saying it that other people might understand. But it was like she was eternally 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
With occasional crosses over into adulthood, you know, especially if Patrick Swayze was on the television.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything you said, I resonate with. I had exactly the same experience. She was my best friend, and I really do think she shaped who I am today. And I'll forever be grateful for the time I had with her.
Yeah.
These people that make us.
I know. And I think that was one of the first things that, you know, when Thomas died, and he died not at home, which I think in a way is a huge relief. He died at the where he lived at the time. It was a residential care centre who had a medical centre on site. So it was like the best place to be all the time. And obviously I really grieve for those people that were there that had to do it. And that's part of their job. They know that there's a risk all the time with people that live there. It's an amazing place called Young Epilepsy. They specialise in that area. When Thomas died, a lot of the people that worked with him at Young Epilepsy came to his funeral. Thomas didn't really have friends. I was, you know, his only friend, and that's not a sad thing. It was the nature of the beast in a way that, you know, friendship wasn't a natural thing that he could have sustained on his own. And, you know, when his carers and his teachers and his assistants and everyone came, and they came to my parents' home, which is where the wake was, and we went into his playroom, which was a designated space downstairs with soft furnishings and everything, that was his own room, covered like head to toe in Disney, because that was his thing. I remember saying to them all, like, he shaped me. I can't, like, I will forever be this Natty shape because of him. And how could I ever spend a day for the rest of my life not acknowledging the shape that I occupy in the world because of him? Like, it would be such a disservice to then say, oh, that was then and this is now. Like, it's just the forever thing, isn't it?
Does it make you fearless? Do you sort of like crack on and say, oh, for God's sake, Natty, get out of your own way? Like doing public speaking, or going to a job interview, or even just being the first on the dance floor at a wedding?
I was sort of that person before. The dance floor, definitely. You will always find me at a wedding dance floor. And my philosophy is, if you don't look like a Muppet, you're not doing it right. If you're trying to impress people, you've done it very wrong. But
Love it.
I think grief and bereavement and that roller coaster and the whirlwind of it and the tornado and the tsunami of it all has taught me that life is really short. And actually, my window of tolerance for bullshit is much smaller than what it might have been before, because actually, sod it, just do it. Just, obviously be sensible. What's the worst that can happen? Prepare for it, do all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I know I'm just a huge Muppet. I am a huge Muppet. And I'm not trying to be more impressive than I am. I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. I totally acknowledge the fact I get it wrong a lot, but I recognize a bravery that a sort of a tone of bravery that I didn't have before. And I think that's, in an odd way, the gift that grief gives you, is that ability to go, I didn't recognize it as bravery at the time because it felt like survival, but actually looking back, being human is incredibly brave. And to be, I don't know, wild enough to experience the full spectrum of human emotion and not immediately go, I feel sad, therefore I'm depressed. It's no, feeling sad is really important. It's so important that we feel sad, because every time we squash it down, I remember the doctor that I saw not long after my brother died, because I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't coping and everything else. He said, grief is like those beach balls. And the more you push it under the surface, when you finally release, the higher it will jump up and it will become unbearable and you won't be able to hold it at all. So he was like, let the ball be buoyant on the water. Let it be. Don't try and squash it down, because it will just be worse the next time. And those are words that I've carried with me for a really long time, for, 10 years of life after, is don't feel sad, feel happy, feel angry, feel all those things, because that's what being human's about. And that's how we connect with each other. And that's how we navigate this mad thing called life.
Yeah, it's so true. You have to just let it be something. Understand that it's part of the process. I mean, we could apply that logic to anything in life, particularly our creative careers. Can sometimes feel like we're grieving when we're in the midst of a project. Oh my goodness. Yes, totally.
Mm-hmm. And I think the odd thing about creativity is that, especially I can only speak for design because that's, the field that I'm in, is you've got to do that thing of removing yourself from it and saying, I don't own this anymore. I've created this thing. Here you go. Do you like it? Did it fill the brief? Yes or no? Okay, move on, carry on, or whatever. But at the moment, we're so obsessed and craving that the work that we do makes us feel something. So how are we supposed to navigate that tension of being human but not feeling too much when it gets rejected or when it gets approved, but also making sure that we leave something of humanity in it so that it then resonates with people? And I think that's one of the hardest things that I found, in the early stages of grief was, going to work, but also doing creative things in my own time. The tank was empty. I was barely surviving. I was barely breathing, eating, sleeping, doing all those things, and then expecting me to be vulnerable at work to create things. It it felt impossible, and it felt like it was so out of reach. And you just have to come up with new strategies of going, okay, what's the last thing that I remember that worked? And going back on, the latest revelation that you had that sort of still resides in your brain, like, oh, okay, no, that I know to be true. Let's carry on from there. And then hope that at some point you continue to take steps in your life that you get new revelations or you get new things that you've learned, and then you're slowly building up as you go along. But yeah, it can feel chaotic in all of it, can't it?
Absolutely. And I think there's like things in that, what you're saying, that people resonate with right now, because I talk to a lot of creatives, as you know, and I get the impression that everybody is really tired. They're just absolutely shattered. Like we can't mention what happened 5-6 years ago. That's forgotten. Everybody's like, oh, don't mention that. Oof.
No.
But I think we're still sort of finding our way. And I don't know, maybe it's just the winter that we're coming out of. Maybe it's that the way the world's changing so fast, and all of the new complicated changes that are coming our way and already here in the industry. It's just quite overwhelming. So I think people are showing up and doing what they can, and I talk to a lot of people, but I get the sense that there's not a lot of hope at the moment, which is quite depressing. So I try and cheer people up and say, we've still got lots to celebrate and cling on to. And yes, the world might feel uncertain, but essentially a lot of it's out of our control, and we have to crack on, really.
Yeah. And, that's such a really great parallel to what it feels like when you're in the early stages of grief, where the world is feeling like it's running away from you and it's not grieving. Why isn't it grieving like how I am? How is it that I feel stuck in time and everybody else is just happy to move on and happy to run the rat race and happy to do it all, when my pain it just feels like I'm going through treacle, like I'm just trying to take a step forward and I feel like I can't, and I've made no progress. And then obviously, thanks to hindsight and time, you go, oh no, I made loads of progress. I made it. Yeah. And I think, I'm sure you can find moments in your life where you've felt like you've literally hit rock bottom, and then rock bottom suddenly has a basement and you're like, oh, it got more crap, and you just think, okay, today wasn't my day, but I've got tomorrow. And that hope of tomorrow, I think, was always the thing that carried me forward and reminded me that today might not be my day. Today I might not leave the house because my social anxiety was so devastating immediately afterwards, and I just had this permanent panic that everyone I loved was going to die, which is totally irrational because, they hadn't until that point. Why were they suddenly all going to drop like flies? I
know.
But it's the funny thing that your brain does, and you've got to have those people around you going, you're going to be okay. It's going to suck. It's going to suck like nothing else you've known, but you will get through it, and you will get to the other side, or you will be able to move past today. And if you just take it one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, whatever capacity you have, there is always tomorrow. And tomorrow's got hope written all over it, and we just don't know what it's going to bring, and that sometimes feels a bit anxious inducing, and you're like, oh God, I don't know. But you've done all these tomorrows until this point, so carry that as your kind of, I don't know, maybe your lantern or the spark that carries you forward, that you've made it this far. How dare anything try to derail you now?
It's true. It's so true. And I love that quote where it's something like, don't worry because don't think that it's over because it's already tomorrow in Australia.
Oh, wow. That's perfect.
Isn't that lovely?
That's so good. That is so good.
I also think when you're at rock bottom, in my case, on the floor with a back injury a couple of years ago now, with yourself going through the most awful grief and huge loss. Sorry for you and your family. But there is a sort of bit of hope that comes out of that, because there's a quote, and it's by Rumi. It's the wound is the place where the light enters you.
Wow.
And it's kind of the philosophy that, when we go to that dark place, when we're broken, we can find that these things start happening to us. So in your case, I'm sensing a huge ton of emotional intelligence and compassion and kindness, and how that will have helped in your relationships and your career, no doubt.
Yeah.
But also you will have realized what you're made of and become more resilient. So, even though we have to go through these awful, inevitable things in life, the silver lining is, if it's not so crude to put it that way, but the silver lining is that we do, see some benefit. There is life after death, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the timing of everything was totally bonkers. About maybe it was 18 months, 2 years, 18 months before Thomas died, I started having art therapy. And I did it because I was doing a course at the time at my place of work at the time. I worked for an amazing charity called the Trauma Recovery Centre. And my boss, the incredible Betsy Deteri, who's just been awarded an MBE for her services for trauma recovery, incredible stuff. I joined her maybe a year after graduating, and did her branding and did all of that stuff. And, it was wild, and she trusted me, and we did it together, and it was brilliant. And she started a course called the Therapeutic Mentoring Certificate, or the Certificate in Therapeutic Mentoring. It's one of the two. I can never remember the order of words, but I did it because I wanted to understand people better. I'm going to work with people for the rest of my life. I should probably know how some of them work. And part of the course requirement was that you did therapy. And coincidentally, we were having one of the class days, and one of the topics was autism. And I reacted in a way I didn't expect. And I ran out of the room. I was in tears. I was shaking. I hid behind the sofa in the staff room. And she found me, and she was like, "Poppet, I think it might be time we start having a chat about it, and you go maybe see a therapist and maybe see someone about it, because this is quite an extreme response to a topic that you knew was coming, and that is a very normal conversation to have when we're talking about people." And I sort of sat there in tears going okay. So I started going to therapy, and I thought, the minimum requirement, I think, is 12 weeks. I'll bash that out. Fine. A year and a half later.
Good grief.
I was still going. And, but it was actually such divine timing. And so perfect, because I finished my art therapy, receiving therapy, a month before my brother died. And it meant that I'd resolved so many pains and hurts and confusions and all that stuff before Thomas died. So I dealt with that bit, and then I could just deal with him going, rather than trying to deal with the life that we led together and the things that didn't go well, because, he wasn't perfect, and my childhood was very turbulent and at times violent and all that kind of stuff. And to be able to get through all of those complications before the big complication showed up, was a real miracle. I can only say it like that, because I don't know how I would have coped had I not done the therapy, and had I not done the MOT on my life, and, investigated all of those feelings and tried to navigate those, 8-year-old Natty and 10-year-old Natty and 12-year-old Natty, and all those key points where I then forgave her for doing the best that she could with what little she had at the time. And, you know, that emotional literacy, like in the 90s, what was that? In the noughties, even less so. So it was just, you know, doing all of that and doing the hard work, and it was hard work, got me into a place where I was almost ready, in a really weird way, to grieve and
yes, I understand.
Not be afraid of the extremities of those feelings because I'd already dealt with them. Does that
yes.
make any sort of sense?
100%, because you would have, I presume you would have gone through the kind of feeling of guilt for recognizing, I suppose, that your parents had it pretty tough. And I can't imagine what it must have been like to be the sister of somebody like Thomas, because how do I put this gently? You know what I'm trying to say?
Say it, absolutely say it.
Yeah, not sidelined, but just sometimes Thomas obviously took priority because of his medical needs. Mm-hmm. So, you know, sometimes you would have felt fed up maybe and left behind. I don't know. I'm maybe assuming all sorts of things. I'm just going on my own experiences of my childhood.
You're very spot on. I did, you know, and I think therapy helped me. I knew already, like, I'd never resented my parents for being my parents and how they parented me, like even before therapy and everything else, because I knew I was malleable. I could bend. I could be flexible. Thomas, his routines and everything else, like his needs, it was so visible and it was so physically visible. There was no way I could ever sort of say, well, what about me or anything else?
Not, but you had to grow up pretty quickly, right?
Oh, I was a registered young carer at age 8. So, you know, and Thomas was epileptic from when he was 6. So, yeah, I was about 7 or 8 when that started. I was with him on his first seizure. You know, and I remember it like it was yesterday, but, you know, and he was having seizures, although he was on medication and a bunch of medication, he was having seizures once a week. And, you know, his record was 56 days, which we were ever so proud of him for. Not that, you know, he had to try hard or anything else. It's just medically, that's what happened that time. And we were in Disneyland Paris when he had his seizure on the 56th day. And there was a sort of a sense of relief, because it was like, oh, okay, now the cycle will begin again. We know the cycle. We know how it works. After days 7, 8, 9, 10, you start to go like, okay, we're in uncharted territory. We don't know what this means and all of that kind of stuff. And, you know, working through all of those incidences and all of those experiences in therapy gave me a new level of respect for my parents, because they didn't have Google to figure it out. They didn't have anything. And being here as immigrants and as expats, all of our family was abroad. So the village that helped raise me and my brother and supported my parents was really small. And there weren't that many people that were like my parents. And, you know, they were ever so brave to do what they did and to sacrifice all that they did to make sure that, you know, Thomas got the best care and the best chance at this thing called life. And I can only ever be grateful, even though sometimes it did really suck.
Adobe is sponsoring today's episode, and given we're talking about creativity and working smarter, it feels like the perfect moment to bring them in. The thing that's caught my attention recently is the new AI assistant in Photoshop, now in public beta on web and mobile. Rather than digging through menus and layers, you just describe the edit you want, remove a distraction in the background, change the lighting, shift the whole mood of an image. Photoshop figures out the rest. You can even use your voice to make changes on the go. And if you use Firefly, the all-in-one creative AI studio, Adobe has just added a full suite of editing tools. Generative fill, generative remove, background removal, generative upscaling, all in one place, supporting over 25 third-party AI models, so you're never locked into one way of working. It's one of those tools where once you try it, going back feels very slow. Link in the show notes. And your parents, I mean, how are they? Are they okay? Are they still around?
Yeah, I think, yes. I've just come back from 3 weeks in the States with them and my husband.
Oh.
And we were seeing my mum's sister while we were out there, and we were skiing in the bits in between. And
Nice.
I have I'm really honoured for the relationship that I have with my parents, and that we have, traveled these waters together and figured out the grief together. And we all grieved so differently. And my dad would characterize himself as a not creative, and my mum would probably call herself quite creative. And then I'm, right on the end. And
Yes.
My dad always jokingly said, "Oh, I've got 2 kids. One's autistic and the other one's artistic." Which is his biggest
Humor will carry you
moment.
through.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was just so interesting when we were grieving together. We handled it so differently. And I think it only represented the fact that we all had unique and individual relationships with my brother. We grieved his loss so differently. And today they're doing great, but there are days that really suck. And, Christmas is really hard because he loved Christmas. Like, he couldn't last a whole year. We'd get to June, July, and he'd have to start watching Christmas films just to have a little something to get him through the 12 months. And he was incredibly cheeky and had a cracking sense of humour. So he'd ask my mum to wrap toys he already had and ask them to be labelled to Thomas from Thomas. So then on Christmas Eve, when we would do presents, he always had the most to get through and to unwrap, and he would always act so surprised, like, "Oh, wow!" And was just a super extra about everything. So Christmas is really tough, and his birthday is on the 2nd of January, so it's just quite a big chunk of time where we're just feeling quite vulnerable. Even 10 years tough on, and, maybe that doesn't go away. And sometimes, some years it's easier, some years it's harder, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's the ebbs and flows of grief and missing someone.
Yeah, it's the songs that get to me. Oh, a certain song will come on and then suddenly it just hits you, doesn't it? And then you're taken back to Christmas's past, and it's very painful. Nat King Cole, when that sort of and then I'm like, oh no, turn it off. And I can't listen to it. It's just too many memories, too many happy memories.
Do you ever find that you want to marinate in that feeling, though? Like, because you feel that closeness to that person, because that was the last kind of thing you had. I feel like my grief is constantly sort of, like I said, ebbing and flowing between, no, turn it off, to, no, I actually need to watch a Disney film because I need to feel that sense of closeness, and I need to get to a point where I know I'm going to inevitably cry or whatever it is, because I just need that sense of closeness that I haven't had in so long, or the air will feel thin, and, suddenly he'll feel closer than he has been in so long. But it's just a really hard thing to describe to people. Like, sorry, I need to lock myself away and just properly marinate in this moment.
I think it's healthy. I think it's dealing with your feelings, and it's part of the grieving process. I remember when my grandma died, my little brother was only young, and I was for some reason angry with him, and I shouted at him, the poor thing. I'm 7 years older than my brother, and we were only young. I think I was 17, so he would have been 10. And I shouted at him and said, "Why aren't you crying? Why aren't you upset?" And stormed off. And we talked about that many years later. He can't remember, but I was just like mad with him. And I think I remember talking to my mum about it at the time, and she was like, "Darling, everybody deals with death in different ways, and sometimes it can take many, many months, and sometimes it can take many years, but you always love them and you always remember them." And I mean, it's I understand what you mean with Veronica. She was such a character, such life and laughter. I just remember the giggling fits we used to have Like, we would absolutely cry with laughter. We were such best friends that we would just have all these private little jokes. So it'll be like little triggers that remind me of those moments.
Yeah.
Like, we'd be out in a shopping centre and people would stare because she looked a bit different. And back in the 90s and the 80s, they weren't particularly friendly. Most people were lovely, but if she found like a railing, she would stand next to it and start practicing ballet. So I would join in just so that people would stare at me as well.
Yeah.
Or she'd dance in shops. I mean, she just had so much joy and fun and kindness and so much emotional intelligence. She basically taught me not to take myself seriously or life seriously, because she would sit down next to me with her lovely soft hands and a squishy, gorgeous, just gorgeousnusness. And she would say, huh, what's wrong with her? What you doing? And then she'd stroke your cheek and say, you're gorgeous. And she was just amazing. She had very, very many different sayings and little kind of routines and rituals. She may have been limited in what she could say, but she was very emotionally intelligent, and she was probably the most beautiful, loving person I've ever known in my life. So I understand.
Yeah, completely. I think Thomas being mostly nonverbal, I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but it's the one that I use. It taught me that he didn't say much organically, but when he did, it was powerful and it was important and it mattered. And it always, if I think about him, like the impression that the legacy that he has left behind, and he said very few things. And the legacy really is also about the way he made people feel. And he was just love overflowing. And because he didn't know how to hate people, he didn't know how to do that. He didn't know how to hold a grudge or anything else. And sometimes I chat too much and sometimes I am too much or whatever, like those silly things that go in your head. And I always think, like, be a bit more Thomas, make sure that what you say is important and it carries weight, and it's going to build people up, not destroy them. And I don't always get that right. But every now and then, I've got his picture, like this wall is littered with stuff. He's right there. But I've got his picture everywhere here, and what I look at when I'm working, and every now and then I just catch myself and I'm like, be a bit more Thomas now. We just need to be a bit more Thomas.
This is so resonating, because I always say be more Veronica.
And my granny as well. So my dad's mum, she was an assistant teacher at a school in Rio, the British school. And she and my brother were thick as thieves. Like, they were best pals. And when she passed away 2 years ago, it was a really different grief, because she had Parkinson's and dementia. So it was quite a long process to, say goodbye to her and all that kind of stuff. And she was still living in Brazil. So I could only see her like once a year when I had enough annual leave and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that one is harder than the other, they're just different. But that grieving process of losing her, and also the fact that she was older. So in your head, there's that like social construct that says, oh, that's fine. Like, that's, it doesn't feel as unjust or unjust as, when Thomas died at 24, like she was 84. So she'd led the life. But losing her, it was huge as well. And always thinking, like, be a bit more Lillian, like be, like Mrs. Lillian. And she loved people, and she had this just endless hope for people. When we cleared out her flat, when she moved to the care home, we found boxes and boxes of grateful parents just saying thank you. Their son or their daughter's name was really struggling to read, and you took the time to make sure that they could, and they now have so much confidence, and we can only thank you. And she just had all these boxes in the back of the wardrobe. I don't know how often she ever looked at them, but it was so so proud to find that box and go, yeah, that's my granny. That's the person I know as well. So, these people that matter, or these seasons of life that we might grieve or whatever, they're all teaching us something, and they're all shaping us. Like I said before, like, it's a real disservice to not say people's names, or not to acknowledge the impact and how it changes the trajectory of your life. Or, so often people say, like, oh, it's a new chapter when someone goes, and it's like, I don't think it's a new bloody book. Like, the thing that might be similar is, maybe the paper stock or the font on the inside, but there's a real cutting point of like before and after, and trying to like hold the bits that are really important from before, but knowing that actually there's a huge adventure waiting for you in the after, because you're figuring out how to rebuild and design your life again. And who are you now when everything else feels like it's gone? Like, what's left behind? And those are the bits that matter.
Yeah, because too often or not, we can get so caught up in our careers that when we do come across something big, that, whether it's a personal injury in my case, or grief, loss in yours, it does make you stop and think, actually, who am I? Like, I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not a founding editor, what am I beyond that? And then you start to realise that whilst work is important, it's important that we pay the bills and all that jazz, and do something we love as a bonus. Really, why are we here, and what matters at the end of the day? And it's not brand identities and and messaging. It's the people we love, and the very precious time that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And how we make people feel. Like, is the impact that we have on others building them up, or is it crushing, or is it, and I don't know, maybe there's that sort of bit of me that's like, as a kid, I was permanently trying to make sure people were laughing, because everything was very serious all the time and all that kind of stuff. And you just end up taking on the mantle of class clown, because you just want to sort of relieve a bit of tension and stuff. But, maybe that's not a bad thing.
Maybe it isn't at all. And there's so much other themes we can talk about in this, but I get the sense that the biggest takeaway that you've had is that you've found yourself, and you've found what you're made of, and it's given you a really amazing blueprint in which to live your life.
Yeah, I think so. It took a long time to get there. Like, it wasn't an overnight thing. I think, we're coming up to, we are 10 years this summer. And I feel like this is maybe the first year I look in the mirror and I know who's looking back at me. And it was really hard work, and it wasn't pretty. Oftentimes it was really ugly, and it wasn't glamorous, and it took a really long time to dig deep and do the work, and work on the healing and figuring it out. And I'm not saying that I'm over it, absolutely not, but you do rebuild. And it's important that we just keep trying, even if today's, like I said, today's not the day. That's okay. There's always tomorrow. And being proud of what is in there, because it's got you this far, and it helped you navigate the worst, and hopefully set sail on the best.
Yeah. That's a lot to offer everyone, a nice big dollop of hope for what has been a tough time for many creators. Well,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nat. It's been amazing chatting with you, and I feel like it's just flown by. I'm very much looking forward to coming down to Bristol this summer and meeting you in person.
Yeah, it's I'm like, this all feels so surreal, because we've been chatting online for like a year now, and I also can't thank you enough for, you carried me through uni. I was struggled to read for years, and Creative Boom was the only thing I read, and it was the only thing that I actually felt like, oh, I I can visualize myself in this industry because I'm reading something that feels real and it feels tangible and it feels like it's real life, and it's not this thing of like, oh, I'm a graphic designer over there and, you know, only like really cool people end up doing it. It's the creative industry is for everyone. And I'm a big fan, as you can tell.
I'm getting emotional because I'm just, the thing I'm thinking of more than anything is we've got Thomas and Veronica to thank, haven't we?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and chatting about this very difficult topic, but very, very valuable to it's very kind of humbling to see that you've come out the other side, and there'll be lots of people listening who will resonate and be thankful for just such a generous offering of what you've been through. And maybe somebody out there's in a bad place right now, and what would you say to them, like if they're struggling and going through what I presume is hell?
Yeah, it will probably feel like hell. It's really important to say that it is feeling like hell. Don't do it alone. The phrase "it takes a village" is not just about a child, it's about all of us. We're meant to do it together, and you've got this. It's not, it will feel like it was the death of you, but it's not. And it will suck at the time, but allow that pain to be the fuel that you need to keep going.
Oh, thanks, Nat. That's really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you so much.
I mean, yeah, that one stays with you, doesn't it? How can it not? Natty, thank you so much. You were so generous, and you've been through a lot. Yeah, thank you. I think what I took from this personally is how grief doesn't just disappear, it actually becomes part of you and shapes you. And in Natty's case, it's definitely shaped how she sees the world and how she connects with people, even how she approaches her creative work. There was also something really comforting in what she said about just letting yourself feel it all, not rushing it, not trying to tidy it up or make it something else. Just let it be what it is, and you'll get there. I know there'll be people listening to this who are going through something right now. Maybe not the same thing, but perhaps something heavy. And if that's you, I think this episode is a bit of a reminder that you're not alone in it. And also that there is still something ahead, even if you can't quite see it yet. We'll be back on Thursday with Natty for The Spark. We'll see you then. Thanks to Adobe for sponsoring this episode. If you're curious about AI Assistant in Photoshop or the Firefly image editor, head to the link in the show notes to get started. You can always start with a free trial, so there's no reason not to have a play.